Welcome to the UnYoked podcast. God designed sex for marriage, but let's be honest. Many single Christians are swimming in a culture that turns something meaningful into dopamine hits, transactions, and even currency. Today isn't
Mhm.
a theology talk about right or wrong. It's a real conversation about why people trade something meaningful for something temporary and how bad patterns often get replaced with new bad patterns. I'm joined by Dr. Brooke Jones from Stronger Women. Brooke,
Mhm.
when you hear the phrase sex is currency, how do you see that play out? And help us unpack what that term really means.
Well, first of all, thank you, Todd, for having me on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to the listeners about this topic. Sex is a currency. I actually hear that a lot. I am an expert in domestic violence work, and I've been doing this for about 15 years, and I've been a survivor of domestic violence through my whole life. So I bring with me kind of packed a skill set. But here's the thing, sex as a currency, as a female, when abuse is present, okay, when we look at abuse systemically, which means it's in every system. Abuse is generational. And I believe that abuse is spiritual. Okay. And all of that plays into grooming a young girl into the teen girl to the young adult girl that comes into her relationships. And sex is a currency as women become, as they learn very young, the ability to have sex as a currency is important because we have power in sex. When we're in an abusive relationship, many times verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse take that away from us. And as a female, there's very few things that we have power over, right? But that is one thing that we have some limited power over. So sex, unfortunately, I would say, becomes a currency. Even as a young girl who's being groomed in the domestic violence and an abusive home, because she realizes that's a way for her to get attention, to get love, to get validation, to get all the things that she is lacking in her home life. Unfortunately, they come from home lives that are broken. I'm speaking from my own experience. So I'm not just like speaking to someone who just had that. I had that. I sought love and attention and validation because I didn't have that from my home, right? There was no safety, there was no trust, there was no core home value. So I was always seeking that, which made me easy prey to individuals who were easy to love bomb, right? Do all the things that would make me feel loved and appreciated so that I would perform sex as a currency. Then what it does, unfortunately, as the person who is the victim or the person who's left, you're left with nothing. There's no transaction. It's a hollow transaction. There's no real love and appreciation and relationship to follow. And that's unfortunate. And that's what follows kind of abusive cycles. But women have used sex as a currency for a long time. There's power. Women will be sexually aggressive, right? Often after an abusive relationship. We see it all the time. I'm not judging anybody. So please, Todd and all the listeners, please don't even take anything I'm saying as judging because I've been there. I've done all the things personally and I've been there. And my job as Stronger Women right now is to help them see that's not really filling you up.
That's right. That's right.
It feels like it is, but it's actually a false bridge that is going to break down, and but only when they do the work that's really necessary do they take the path through the struggling times, through the endurance times, through the character. It's like Romans 5, 3 through 5, where it talks about endurance produces character. Character produces something wonderful, right? And produces hope, and it's a perseverance, and so I've realized that the women are going through this, but if they can learn to not live on the currency of the sexual encounter, they'll find a deeper relationship with the Lord. They'll find a deeper relationship with themselves and definitely build self esteem and boundaries,
Yeah, this
physical boundaries.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit because I'm going to sort of explain how we went from a divorce podcast to an episode on sex to this is our part two episode on sex to how do we get into these mesh wonderfully. And let me set the
Mhm.
table for our listeners and for you for the rest of this conversation. So I want to
Fantastic.
say something that's really for everybody, and it's almost therapeutic for me to say. When I decided to make a divorce podcast, I was going to boldly, I'm going to use the word boldly, talk about the different landmines and opportunities that come from divorce and unyoking, thus the name Unyoked. And one of them was sex. And I wrote that episode for a full year because I didn't want to just throw it out there. Like I really thought about it. I ran it by pastors, I ran it by friends, I prayed over it. And it's my most listened to episode, most watched and most listened to, and most visited webpage on the site. Imagine that sex. But it's because people are out there looking for answers, looking for validation. Well, here's what happened. I've had people write me personal letters saying, "Thank you so much for that episode. Wow, you're bold. Wow, you're crazy for even coming out and talking about this. Thanks to you, I no longer have sex before marriage." And then the next day I'll get an email. "Thank you so much for doing that. You've really given me a new lens. And now I don't feel burdened by the rules. And now I am having sex before marriage." I'm like, how do I write an episode that two people can listen to and get the 2 different things out. So I've really been struggling with that, and I've been thinking about how to do a part 2 to go deeper, not replace what I've said because I believe in what I said, because I was just touching the elephant about here's how people feel or whatever. So when I met you and you and I were talking about sex as currency, it really opened my eyes to this thing. And so at the hook of this episode, I said this isn't about theology, right or wrong, but that's really not 100% true because everything involves theology. If God is in his rightful place in our lives and he is our object of worship, and God is good and he loves us, and his laws are not for don't do this, don't do that. They're reasons he created sex, he created marriage, he created a plan. And if we live with those correctly, they operate correctly. Well, what's happens is as we get selfish and we
Mhm.
start creating our own gods and our own wants. Well, these what you just mentioned, I'm tying this together. What you just
Mm.
mentioned, as men have power and money, we use those influences to get our desires, which is sometimes sex.
Mhm.
Women uses their beauty and sex to get their what they want. So men
Yes.
sometimes use relationships to get sex, and women sometimes use sex to get relationships. Men use power and money to get sex, women use sex to get power and money. It's we're both misusing and abusing our powers to get what we want. And so there's some people who are gonna listen to this episode, they're like, "Well, why don't you just land the plane on if you're out sex outside of marriage is wrong?" Well, my argument is
So that.
sex inside a marriage can be a sin too, because if they use sex as a transaction, they're sinning as well. So this isn't a that's why I said this isn't about theology. It's not to say premarital sex or postmarital sex is wrong. It is when we use our selfish powers to get what we want, things become transactional and it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy, and that's why I want us to have that lens as we're talking. That's why this podcast is having this topic because, to your point, when you are groomed into this way of thinking, then you live out this way of thinking, which is why some women get married and they quit having sex because they use it as a tool to get what they want. They've already got it, and then they cut the sex off because they only saw it as a transaction, and that's why
Mhm.
sex sometimes stops after you're married. It's this very topic. Am I wrong? Tell me where I'm wrong, but this is the lens I have on.
So there is many reasons sex stops after marriage.
Right.
There's many reasons,
Fair.
and I'm not an expert in that. But what I am an expert in, Todd, is I'm expert in domestic violence. And what I know is that sex in marriage is used in domestic violence couples as power and control. Women can be raped by their husband sorry to be so bold, but we're talking bold. Women can be forced by their husband to have sex with other men or do other sexual acts they don't agree to. Sex can be used in so many perverted ways. So, sex is one element of abuse, right? So, I don't look at sex as someone responding. I look at somebody as this has been a perverted abuse that has happened to them for a long time. They might be exploring something they've never experienced because they've been under control for a long time. What we have to do is keep this person safe in their journey of exploration and doing all the things to say, okay, that's what you're doing. But the truth is, that's not real love.
That's right. That's right.
That's not real love. You can have an in between. Nobody cares about the in between. But please don't assume, dive, love to this to be your next love because if they do, they've never healed. There's never been health. There's never been the thing they need. So they're going into the same relationship. And so for me, we get in our programs, we do a 12-week program with our women.
Okay.
And week 6 is boundaries, right? So halfway through, right? So usually about this time, if anybody is going to have been redating or re-upping or whatever you call it, right? We don't shame anybody for
Right.
anything.
Sure.
What we say is, are you safe? Is it safe? Who is it? Like, who is this person? Is it new? Is it your ex? Is it whatever? Right. And then is it real? Right. Because I think that you talked about the dopamine, I think earlier. And one of the things that I talk about with my women every time is that the healthy relationship will seem boring
That's right. When you live on
every
adrenaline,
time.
you create the chaos and invite the chaos in to keep yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the relationship, the guy, okay, let's talk in women terms. And I'm just going to put a note out here. Men can be abused. I've helped men. I know men can be abused. And we're not talking about that topic, that could be a
that's
topic.
right.
But when women come to me and they are dealing with things, they have to make the decision to make the changes in their life, right? They are the ones that have to make the decision to say, I'm changing and I'm going to make a decision to be different in my life. And that's when we begin to work with them, right? And it's until that point that you can't really work with the person until they're ready, right? Because they are still trapped.
Well, they're
Because
living an empty it's an empty life of
yeah,
transactional. You finally get to the point of saying, "There's gotta be something better or more," and
yes.
it can't be everyone else's fault, even though everybody can have blame, but you're the one responsible to say, "I'm gonna stop that. What part do I own?"
At the end of the day, Todd, when we work with people, they have to come to 2 words. I decided, right?
That's right.
Th if someone doesn't say, "I decided to do a change. I decided to lose weight. I decided to get off drugs. I decided," there's really not much you can do with someone except love on them, right? But it's when they're ready to move. And what I found with the women as stronger women, when we present, we talk a lot about hope. Hope is a skill. So we teach the women how to have hope as a skill, right? How to establish goals, how to establish pathways that develops the willpower for a person to like get to the next stage, right? So even if they're hopeless and helpless at things, we can at least have a conversation. There's always something that you can have a goal in,
No,
right?
I love that. There's so many nuances and so many questions I have, but can I
Mhm.
back up and just ask this big question? We were talking
Sure.
you mentioned the word dopamine. I do believe that there is a large section of people who they grew up in chaos, they only know chaos, and when chaos doesn't exist, they subconsciously or consciously create chaos because they thrive in that, they live in it. When it comes to women who are sort of tired of men, I feel like it flips 2 ways. It's either, "I'm done," and then you get an
Yes.
isolated, lonely, bitter
Yes.
person because 'cause we're not built for that,
Yes.
Or you get
Yes.
somebody who just says, "Well, maybe I'll change this guy." Or the next one is, "Well, they're not gonna change, but I'm gonna manipulate the situation where I can tolerate it." Or I'll try to use my seductive powers to at least keep him at bay for the best I can, or what is that mindset of what happens to people who've been abused or live in chaos? Like, what does it take a horrible moment before most people flip? What makes people get out of this crazy, crazy world that some people live in?
So I have seen, thank you for saying all that, Todd. I have seen all the cases that you've talked about. I've seen people in every range and sphere of care, sphere of response, sphere of domestic violence, and I've worked with them all, right? And we can address. We like to call the moment the aha moment. That's the moment.
Mhm.
Now, there's 1,000 moments that lead up to the aha moment, but it's the aha moment. That's the one that you're like, it's do or die, it's make or break, he's gonna kill me or not, whatever it is. And every woman that we work with has that moment. It comes to this place, and I can't tell you what that is, but everybody who's in the situation gets it. Recognize that women will go back 7 times on average. Remember, they don't go back because they love abuse. They go back because they don't wanna be homeless. They don't wanna live in their car. They don't want Johnny mad because he can't be in soccer practice, and, "Why are you doing this to me, mom?" So a lot of people are like, why will she go back? Because there's so many systemic restrictions to her to getting the help she needs, right? So part of the challenge is mom may want to leave, but she can't. So when sex is involved, which is always involved in marriage, it's a transaction, it's part of the deal. Different cultures also look at it differently, right? Shame cultures look at sex differently. Western cultures, American, we look at it differently, right? There's legal rights. I can get divorced, but if I'm in a shame culture, I could still be in America, but my culture won't let me. They're going to kill me if I get divorced. So I'm not doing that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're facing all of those different ideals, right? And so what we look at is we look at danger first. We always look at danger with the woman first. Where is she in the spectrum? Does she know she's being abused? Because a lot of women don't even know.
No, because
Right.
we grew up in the culture or they grew up in that subculture, they think that that's
Yes.
normal.
Yeah.
Men are this way, women are this way. That's the way it is. I'm gonna play the cards that are dealt me to keep
Hmm.
myself either sane or dopamine hit or whatever, and they don't realize that there's actually another way out, is some of it, and to your point, I think I wanna reiterate what you said, or they're in a world where they think there's no other choices. There can't be
Right.
something better. They don't even know how to envision it, much less aim for it.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the dopamine hit specifically. We do one of our chapters is on boundaries, and we talk about how to set healthy boundaries. But actually we do that as a second part. We talk previously and more importantly about why they won't and don't set healthy boundaries. Okay, and that's what you're talking about, the dopamine hit, okay? That's where we're going with that. Why don't I set a boundary? I wanna say no, but I can't. I say yes, but then I'm angry,
Yeah. Why did I
right?
say
I'm
yes to that? I
angry.
came in gonna say no, but I said yes. Why did I do that?
Right, now I'm banging the pots and pans in the back, I'm mad, whatever. So we try to address that upfront, and we try to address it and say, "Okay, you're people pleasing, you have hypersensitivity, you're codependent." Right? You have all these needs about shame and blame, and you think you have to be friends with their friends, and you have all these reasons why you can't set healthy boundaries. So, why don't we address those first? Right? We look at that and say, why don't we say, why can't you set a healthy boundary with this person? Now, Todd, the thing is, abusive people will not accept healthy boundaries. Okay. So what we talk about is this person healthy boundary or not? If it's not, then you just accept it and you logically know I'm going to deal with abuse in this relationship. But there's a big difference in knowing it versus being captive by it,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
So, and like I said, midway through our course, we go through like all the relationships. Adult children often abuse
That's right.
mothers. It's a big deal. A lot of court history and court custody is abuse in the court system to bankrupt the mom. So many things happen that we're just like, how can we support the people that are going through it, right? Through hope and healing. That's what we try to do. But we can't do everything because there's so much a person needs, right?
Well, it's
So
oh, can I
yeah.
interrupt for a second? I
No, please do.
It's something you said I think is really big.
Yeah.
You could tell somebody something all the time, right? And they don't until they tell themselves. And what you do is you
Yes.
put them through an exercise where when they say it out sometimes you just say it out loud and then you hear yourself. There's an old phrase I love, "Thoughts disentangle themselves over the lips and through the fingertips." When you talk and
Oh.
when you write, these jumbled thoughts start having meaning. And so when you make people look at their relationships, when you make them say it out loud, they're like, "Wait a minute. I'm literally saying this person isn't healthy for me," and they finally get it. You're like, "Oh, I've been telling you they're not, but now that you've said it, now you hear it." And then I guess your next step is, okay, now that you've identified healthy or boundaries that need
Mhm.
to be placed and who may not accept it, I guess the logical conclusion is you may not need that person in your life. Like, how do you what does that look like?
Well, then part of boundaries in the lesson is we teach them 4 steps to setting healthy boundaries. The first step is define your rights. And I'm going to tell you, the women struggle. They struggle with defining their rights. It's not so much communicating them, it's defining what do I really want from this person. Then I teach them a skill that it's very simple. It's a communication skill. And I'll tell your listeners today, you can teach your children this. It's super easy. You can do this with in business or personal. When you say anything to me, I can say to you back that I understand how you feel. And when you say that you want to break up with me, let's say we're doing a conversation as a couple. When you say, oh, you want to break up with me, I feel hurt and wounded. I want to know what we can do to mend our relationship. Okay. Just as, like, think about a child. When you steal my red crayon, right? I feel hurt.
Mhm.
I want you to give me my crayon back.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's when you, I feel, I want. And that we found, I teach that to all of my clients, all my participants as part of our conversation with anyone we work with. Because quite frankly, you can't say, I'm going to be honest with you, I can't say, I feel like, don't say I feel like, because you're going to add a word in there that's not a good word, starts with an A, ends with a hole.
That's
You
right.
can't do
That's
that,
right.
right? Not doing that. I feel like you're in whatever. We're gonna say, "I feel." You have to use a feeling word.
Mhm.
Do you understand? It's important. You have to go I statements. That's all the way. When a person is willing to step up and be that communicator, they're gonna have a better relationship with everyone around them.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am an advocate for great communication versus playing out your feelings with actions or silence. Words are
Mhm.
important, and it's like, "Well, I don't know how to communicate like that." Well, learn. Exercise that muscle. It will affect the rest of your life if you could
Yes.
take thoughts and feelings and put them into words. Thoughts, feelings, and that's what communication is, taking thoughts, feelings, and emotions and putting them into words. And what a great
Yeah.
skill set. And
Uh-huh.
not enough people do it,
Agree.
men and women. I think men are worse than women, actually. That's my opinion. I think men are
Okay.
really bad at it.
Well, that this may be another podcast, but I'm gonna put a little thing in there because I don't think men are allowed or taught the ability for the full range of emotions that women are allowed to experience growing up. And I think that minimization on men has kept them from being fully who they are, not just warriors in Christ and God fearing and whatever. But think about David. Man, David was like crying and he was praising the Lord and whatever. And how many men do we feel sensing those emotions in that great clarity? I think men have been minimized in the generality, just as I see it, because you guys should have had more emotion. That's just my personal
I
opinion.
couldn't agree more, and I'm gonna go back to what you said earlier. It's a Nothing's true in the whole world. It's in the different cultures. In our American culture, especially the John Wayne, "Pull yourself up, you're the provider, you're the strong guy, you're the this." Like, we don't raise Renaissance men anymore, and it's a David wrote poetry, and, he put he put thoughts, feelings, and emotions into words. It's like he did
He
it,
sure
and
did.
God loved him, right? He loves us too, but you know what I mean? Like, that is a great example of a man after God's own heart, and it is okay,
Yes.
and we sorta minimize its need, and we almost make fun of it for, "Oh, you're too soft, you're too whatever," and it affects the women, because when you have a man who just once again, he thinks his only job is power and money, then you're putting him in a position where then now he's just gonna use the power and money to go get what he wants.
Mhm.
Versus talking and communicating. I'm gonna tell you a little something here, and my friends that are listening to this, I use this all the time. I think this is a rabbit trail, but it applies here. I tell people this all the time, and I'm 90% sure I'm right, but I could be wrong. You can marry a stranger tomorrow, a stranger off the street, or an arranged marriage, if 3 things: you both love the Lord, you both know how to communicate, and you both know what a covenant is. Because my argument is
Wow.
that communication will get you through all the challenges, and if you know what a covenant is, you're not gonna leave when things get hard, right? And
Right,
if you're both
right,
aiming towards the
right.
same place, you'll both end up at the same place. So if you both love the Lord, you both know how to communicate, and you know what a covenant is, I think anybody can get married off the street tomorrow. That's how high I think of communication. Because if you can talk and I'm feeling this way, and when you do that, I feel like this, and oh, when I do that, you feel like that. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, then let me quit doing that. Like, it's a healthy practice. And yeah, you're right. Maybe we need to deep dive into that later, but I want to underline that. I think you're dead on.
Mhm.
Okay, so healthy boundaries, exercises to well, one to identify how to do healthy boundaries.
Yes.
And then is there ever a mechanism to say, "Okay, how do you walk away from someone?" Like, because 'cause let's say they have the aha moment, not only I want help, but aha, that relationship is toxic to me. I need out of
Mhm.
it. How do you help somebody say, "I'm not gonna get in anymore, but I'm gonna get out of that one?"
So, the most important thing to know about helping anyone in domestic abuse or domestic violence is they are the expert in their own life. That is how you help a person in domestic violence. So, I can do all things, right? Whatever, but I never move if the person doesn't move first
You can't tell them
because
what to
they're
do.
the expert.
Yeah, you can't say they're part
No,
of their life.
never.
It's their life, their ramifications, and you don't want somebody to do something that has tragic or tough events, and then they're sitting there blaming you for putting them in that situation.
Yeah, and I think it's even more serious when we look statistically for domestic violence work just specifically. I agree with what you're saying in helping anyone in any crisis. But in domestic violence, 75% of the deaths of domestic violence happen when they're leaving. So we have to be really, really careful, right? When we start working with anyone, if they can't keep our book, if they can't keep our materials there, they're not ready for us. And it's sad because they're away from us and we can't get to them, right? But they're isolated. And we know when someone is in domestic violence, it requires isolation and dependency. Those are the 2 things that have to happen. So we might lose someone to abuse. That's how I say it. We've lost them to abusive relationship because 'cause they're gone from us. We can't connect. Right, because it will be dangerous for them to connect. So we have to go through seasons, right, where we have clients calling us, but we can't write them or we can't talk to them because it's dangerous. So we have to be available, we have to be loving, we have to be open, right? We have to be ready when they're ready. And so, like I like to think about care, Todd, is there's spheres of care when helping someone. When I'm at Stronger Women and I'm helping someone, I think about spheres of care. It's one, two, and three. Okay. Sphere one, think about like a sphere one. It's sphere one, it's emergency. 911. This is a client that's calling me that needs crisis care. They need police, they need emergency, they need shelter, right? We're not that solution, but we can help them, right? If they're calling me. The second kind of care that comes to me is number two. It's called transition. Transition includes legal, custody, job changes,
Safe
career,
places to sleep. That's
displacement,
displacement,
like
right?
everything that happened it's horrible. Transition is horrible, okay, and it goes on for a long time. So they come to us, and so we try to help where we can, but again, we're not the right fit for them. When someplace at the end of transition, okay, we can coordinate them back to care, that's great. But at the end of transition towards the third sphere, which is what I call beyond, it's number 3, it's people who need counseling. They've gone to the shelter, but they're done with their time there. They need counseling, but they can't afford it, right? Who has 150 bucks, right? And just that kind of thing. So these are our clients that are out there struggling. They can come to us for free, right? At no cost, scholarship. They come, they go through a 12-week program, they go to open groups, they can do different things and they can actually heal so they don't have to do it again,
That's
hopefully,
right.
right? And they can heal from what will happen to them. So we talk about the awakening, we talk about the abuse a little bit, but most of what we do is talk about healing for them.
That's right.
We talk about boundaries, we talk about self-esteem, we talk about redefining their life, right? We
Yeah,
do those things so they can grow beyond. You can't just sit around and talk about the abuse all day. You have to grow them from this stage to the next
that's
stage.
right.
And that's where hope is built.
That's 100% right. And by the way, we're partly into our next episode that we're gonna talk about the detail, but it's okay because we need that's almost the on-ramp for what we're gonna go back to the sex as currency because some people came in and are like, they heard the word sex and they're really interested, like, "Hey, get to that part." But here it is.
Okay, let's go back to
Let's go
that.
back to that because it's
Okay.
also part of the healing to say, "What part do I own?" And you
Yes.
started with it. Our culture and their subculture of how some people grew up using the sex as currency idea of saying, "This is the asset I have.
Yes.
I am going to use it to
Yes.
manipulate this broken situation I'm in." And you have to realize what you're doing because once again, you're misusing your power and they're misusing theirs. Now, I'm not saying they're equal sins or whatever, and one is sometimes a cause and effect. I'm not trying to justify, but I am saying it is two broken lenses that people have to say, I want what I want, and this is how I'm going to get it. And I want what I want, and here's how I'm going to get it. One is a defense mechanism, one is an offensive mechanism, probably, but without the nuance.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's Todd, you just said it. One's defensive, one's offensive. It's like people are struggling using what they have. It's like an idol that's coming in front of what God is trying to do. And it's like if we can remove that idol from our lives, we would be in more direct connection with God.
that's right. That's right. And so
Yeah.
what you're I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're saying is that some women yes, I mean, sex is a big word, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of layers to it. So this is just one slice of the pie.
Yeah, sure.
There are people who like sex because they have a high sex drive, and to heck with it, let's go do whatever, whatever, Katie barred the door. But then there's other people who say, "Oh, I've learned to use my beauty and sex to appease and to promote." And
Mhm.
sex as currency is that idea that there are women, married and not married, it's irrelevant, that
Right.
say, "I I don't enjoy it, I'm not using it for what it's for, I am using it
Mhm.
only to manipulate a situation, and if I want a guy and he wants it, then I'm gonna give it." And I've heard that 1,000 times, I've seen it, I've experienced it.
Even say it's more than just I want a guy. I want to feel loved.
That's right, and I feel
I
it
would say it
when
more like
that's right.
that.
Yeah.
I wanna feel loved, so I'm doing this thing so I can feel loved. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Percent. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes there is the nuance of climbing the ladder or getting what you want, and the other
Mhm.
part is like,
All the things.
if that makes him hold me well, it goes back to what we said. Men use relationships to get sex, women use sex to get relationships, and that's not
Yes.
100% global rule, but it does play out a lot,
Yes,
and
it does.
it's dangerous because that's none of that is what God intended in marriage or
Mm-mm.
out. Right? Like, and none of it's the way it was built for bonding, and it's a selfless bonding where you're there
Mhm.
for the other person, not you're a tool to get what I want, and that's the broken part, and so, I think men and women are guilty of sex as a currency in this conversation because especially you're the expert with women, that abused women
Yes.
really know how to play that card, and unfortunately, they're doing it to their detriment
Yes.
'cause it's what feels good and feels like a quick win is actually a long-term loss.
Right.
You're putting yourself in a
Exactly.
spiral that you're going deeper and deeper versus boundaries, and I think there's an element here
Yes.
of once you something becomes habitual, it becomes a new problem because now you're in the habit of it, which is even worse than the original sin because now you can't see another way out of it. You've built your ruts and your expectations.
Agreed. And I would say once again, I have counseled women for a decade or more that when you meet a healthy partner, it will feel boring. It will feel like a relationship that you probably don't want. And yet, that is exactly what you need to be looking for because what you have experienced and what you're seeking with this up and down is actually an alarm. It's an alarm bell. And unfortunately, our media, our movies, everything about our systems, right? Systemic, right? Tells us that's love, chemistry, make it happen, no, whatever, Romeo and Juliet, all the things. No, that's not real. That's not what it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, the guy that you're supposed to love or the girl you're supposed to love is just some everyday person who's like in the same lane as you. And all of that flash in the pan is danger. That is your danger. So I tell my girls every day that is your alarm system. It's not love. It's not infatuation. It's danger. Do you understand? Like
Oh,
it
I do.
you have to like change the way you think about how you're attracted to another person. When you leave abusive relationships or a divorce or whatever, you have to really change that in your soul. Like, I think it's important.
Oh, I love this. I'm gonna preach to the choir on this because I have a friend, and she was
Mhm.
telling me, like, "I'm so frustrated, guys, what you feel like you're in a relationship and it's a one night stand, but it's not. It's your 3rd date, but it's still your one night stand." She goes, "How do you"
Third dates.
3rd
What's
date.
with that
It's the 3rd
again?
date, right?
Yeah.
She goes, "You don't do it on the 1st, but
Yes.
the 3rd, sure." But it's
No.
the
Third.
idea is like, "Why?" And I said, "Well, why don't you make people wait a month?" Or 2. She goes, "Why would I do that? They'll leave." And I was like, "Ding, ding, 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 ding. That's what you want. That's what you want. You wanna weed out the guy who will leave if you
What?
don't. That's
Okay.
why I tell you to wait."
Todd, how did it happen that the 3rd date is the sex date? I don't know. I know we're saying this on the Christian podcast, but I'm saying that's like a universal rule, like
It
through
is.
things, and it should never be. Especially, it should be terrible. Like,
It's a
but 3rd
fact.
date.
1 feels cheap, 2 feels like, "Okay,
Yeah.
now we really got to know each other," and, like, 3rd, it's like, "Oh." let's test this out, or it's an
whatever.
expectation. Yeah,
So much could go wrong. Third date is not anywhere into trust. It's not into love. It's not into caring for another human being. And we can't be there in 30 dates. So I hope our friends who are listening to this are like not being offended by what we're saying, but they're thinking about what they're doing or whatever, considering, hey, we're not against sex. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, friends, think about it. Just think about it. Be safe about it. Do the right things, you know?
I totally agree, and I'm gonna re-underline something else you said, 'cause I just think it's so important. I know everybody knows it, but sometimes just when you hear it out loud, it'll click.
Yeah,
It's systemic in the fact that, like any movie, in order for them to sell the movie, they gotta throw the love story. I don't care if it's an action movie, you gotta throw the love
for
story in,
sure.
and
Yeah.
almost every time, there is 2 people who have a romantic tension. They'll
Hmm.
finally sleep together 3/4 way through the movie, and at the end, they're falling in love, and they're gonna get married. You're like, "You in the storyline, you met each other 24 hours ago, or you met each other 1 week ago," and
Uh-huh.
Hollywood sells it when you find your person, you'll know that
Yeah.
fast, and you'll live happily ever after, and I'm like,
It's not
"It's
that
a
way.
lie." Like, every time I see those things, I roll my eyes. I'm like, "That's actually doing a disservice to people who pretend that there's such thing as a soulmate, that sexual chemistry will conquer all, and I feel in love." Like, you said something a minute ago, and I'm gonna go on my soapbox here because it's so right, and that is, love is not a feeling, and that
Hmm.
feeling of being in love is dangerous. Love is a
Hmm.
verb, it's an action, and that
Hmm.
is shown over time and under unique circumstances that you can see love manifesting, and that takes time to get to know someone, for it to grow, for it to develop, for it to be
Yes.
real, and this idea of, "Oh, I feel like I feel I'm in love," that's just a feeling that actually
Right.
goes. It comes and goes. And, like a marriage, that covenant, back to knowing what a covenant is, when you marry
Hmm.
someone, a covenant says, "I make a promise that when I'm in love with you or out of love with you, sickness or in health, whether I like you or not, I'm staying. I'm staying because I made a covenant with you that says, this is what God said." He goes, "We're in a covenant." I'm not saying I didn't create Adam and Eve. Who knows what their situation was? God's like,
Right.
"You're in a covenant marriage. You're in one. By the way, here's how you're gonna get married, have sex." Sex was the covenant, like, it was the covenant, it was the bond between people, that's what God
Hmm.
created, and when we're out here trying to feel in love, use it as a weapon, use it to get what we want, and then we're having it even outside of marriage, it's like it's complicated because it's like, that's not the intent of what God had, and we're putting our I'm going back to where I was 30 minutes ago, we're
Yeah.
putting our wants and desires over His, and we're using the powers that we have to manipulate people. And it's a dangerous, dangerous place to be. Sex is such
Hmm.
a powerful weapon and
Yeah.
bonder
Yeah.
that and using it as currency is super dangerous. And I think a lot of people listening, I hope this opens their eyes to say, wow, I guess I really am doing that. I've never thought about it before. And the answer is, yeah, men do it too. This isn't just a woman thing.
Right. And you know what, Todd? There's no judgment about our conversation today. Friends listening, sex as a currency is a little bit of a troubling statement. It's a little abrupt. But here's the thing. We may all be doing it, and you need to evaluate where you are with that. And there's no judgment here. But if you need to talk to someone, help with someone, whatever, just call us, call Todd, reach out to him because we're here to help, right? And we're here to help.
I love how you said it. And a wise man told me this one, and, people who listen to my podcast, they know I'm transparent. I embarrass myself all the time. Well, my mouth, I embarrass myself, so much less when I tell a story.
Okay.
But he was talking to me about a topic like this topic, and he said, "I'm not your Holy Spirit." And it was his way to say, "I'm not what you just said, I'm not just like, in other words, until you're ready, or
Yeah.
till God pokes at you. If God poked at all our sins, we would be on the floor in a fetal position all day, but He's a loving God. He doesn't thumb us to death on everything we do. He hits us. And so when just like your people that you help, when they have their aha moment, sometimes God forces our
Mhm.
aha moments. That's a fair theology. He
Yes,
does.
for sure.
And sometimes through our own situations, bad lenses, or just introspective uh, musings, we can come and realize, wow, that's broken. That's a broken way to look at that. I need to work on that. And so when you're ready, work on it. So I'm not browbeating you. That's why I said this isn't about theology. It 100% is. That's a lie. It's 100% about
Yeah.
theology and healthy theology. But it's not here to say the Bible says this, do it. If you don't do it, it's a sin. Turn off the podcast. No, no, life is nuanced. God created
Yeah.
psychology too. God created our defense mechanisms and trauma response. And you're in the nuances of that with your ministry to say,
Mhm.
I'm dealing with
Mhm.
women who have been gone through trauma, have defense mechanisms. And some
Yes.
of those are very unhealthy. Some are not all defense mechanism people are unhealthy.
Right.
Some are very
Yeah.
healthy. God
They're
gave them to
very
us
raw.
for
Yeah.
and so they have uses. The problem is some are very unhealthy. And when you don't know you're in a bad pattern, you're gonna repeat the pattern, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, so I'm gonna lead into that, is I've never been in an abusive relationship like that, so I don't know anybody who I don't even know anybody in my proximity if they're hiding it if they are, right? So I don't know.
Mm.
But what I don't understand, and I need your help on, is people who seem to be in abusive relationship find abusive relationships. And I seem to repeat it, and I'm like, "I can't how do you know somebody is physically abusive or emotionally abused? Like, why do people who are in them gravitate back to them? Like, what is it about it? Is there an attraction to a type of person or a bad boy? Is it as simple as, "Oh, that's a bad boy, I like bad boys," or, like, how do women find these jerks? Is that a simple way to say it?
Mhm. I think that's a fair way to say it. I've wondered that myself when I personally have been through this. So I'm talking personal experience as well as many women. You don't know you're in an abusive relationship. You don't know. Okay.
It's
You don't
normal.
know.
It's a frog in
It's
boiling
just
water. It
normal.
is what it
Like,
is.
okay, he loves me. He is doing all the things. He cares for me. He brings me
He
flowers. He
tells me he
does
loves
all the
me.
sweet
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
He tells me he loves me. Same as you, Todd. You did that to your wife. I mean, whatever, right? So, but the difference is that when the abuser person does it, they do it for a reason. They do it for an outcome. They do it differently. So it's like
It's a
you don't
manipulation.
actually know you don't know you're getting into it. You really don't know. It's very difficult to know. And that's okay. When you're a victim, so I said to you earlier in the podcast on the previous episode, we talked about I had been raised in a family that was abusive and that I had had abusive relationships in my teens and in my adulthood. Well, given that, that leaves me to be a person who is, like, predicted to be abused, right, by people, right? So, I was kinda set up to be abused. So, you end up getting into the situation and you don't know you're there. You don't know they're abusive because, for example, in my case, my husband, I had a husband that, do you have a minute for my story?
I'm
Do you want me
if
to tell
I
my story?
everybody would love to hear it, and I would too.
Okay, so let me tell you my story. So I was raised in a family that was abusive, unfortunately, from childhood. A lot of abuse, uh, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, all the things. And I ended up as a teen getting into unhealthy relationships, which I knew um, that was really what I had to bring. So unfortunately, that's what I had to deal with. Then I got into adulthood. In my 18th birthday, my dad moved me out of my house. He said, My legal limit to you is done." So on my 18th birthday, I was out on the street and I had to fend for myself. So I ended up figuring out a few things, but I ended up in a place where my first place I came to live. for homelessness, okay? Remember, I was a 18-year-old teenager, still I consider myself a teenager at 18, trying to find a place to live. I ended up at a place that man became my first husband,
Mm,
okay?
yeah.
So he became my first husband, knocked on the door, brought me in, lived there, couple years, we're married, okay? So that was not a healthy relationship. It ended up in abuse, all kinds of abuse. But in my mid-20s, I thought like, that's behind me, right? Like no one's gonna know
Yeah,
that that
that's a
happened to
season of
me.
life. I don't even have to talk about it. I'm
Yeah,
past.
and I honestly, they called it, Todd, battered wife syndrome
Okay.
then. They didn't call it domestic violence. There wasn't the power and control wheel. We didn't have tools then. This is in the 90s, okay? So I ended up moving quickly forward in my career, top agent, making big money, right? Six figures in the knees, thinking I'm all this and that, right? And I meet this guy who is Mr. Wonderful. So we end up having a quick romance, which you need. And we eventually, he said to me, darling, you don't need your career. You don't need your job. I have all the money we need. So what do you think I did?
Quit and said yes.
Of course I did. I quit my job and said yes. Then he said, honey, we're going to build our love story. We're going to move across the country and we're going to start anew in this whole new place. And I said, what? To my safe, secure place I lived. What do you think I said?
Yeah, let's go. Live happily ever after and get
Let's
isolated.
go,
Let's
baby.
go.
Of course,
Yeah,
let's go,
let's go
baby.
live
Let's
this
make
love
this right.
story out.
Yeah, of course I'm gonna do that. Like, what do you think? So I'm on it. And so the minute I get into the alone, isolated, dependent upon him, abuse starts like I'd never experienced. So it increased, abuse always increases. So started with emotional abuse and then verbal abuse, and then it was got to physical abuse. Quick, couple years later, he decided that he was upset with me for something, and he decided to hold me hostage. So I always say that because my husband, like, who loves me, like, this is the man who vowed to protect me, all the things. He held me hostage. He held me hostage for a day and a half, took my glasses, he took my phone, he broke everything. And I had to escape with a taxi to a hospital to get care for my wounds. So I get there and they're talking to me once I'm cared for or whatever. They're talking about domestic violence. And I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? Like, I don't even know. So I'm so afraid to not upset him that I won't file police reports. I call him to pick me up, right? I could have left.
Oh,
It
wow, yeah,
was
you
like,
called the guy to say, "Come and
who
get
did
me
I
out of this
call,
place."
right? Who did I call? I called him. And all the girls are like, "No, you
Right.
didn't call."
They're trying to use logic, and you're not in a logical space.
No. And I'm telling you this because I'm a domestic violence expert now, but I wasn't then because I was in it, right? So I've lived it. So I went home, went with him, and I was gonna die. Like, I'm not kidding you. I was gonna die soon. So I knew I'm gonna file for divorce. So I filed for divorce. Okay. Wow, big move. Big move, girl. You It only pissed him off.
So say,
I had 2 years. Okay, so the state came after him for battery. Criminal battery. We had stalking, aggravated stalking, the restraining orders, like, he violated so many times. I mean, it was just insane, right? So, it was awful, right? But I couldn't get away from him because he just wanted to destroy me. So, eventually, and it was 2 years, I had to live my life like cash and just, like, not living. And these women, I didn't have children, and the women that have children, I can't
oh,
imagine,
it's a
right?
it's a
Like,
it's a
how do they
harder
do
burden.
it?
That's right.
I mean, and I wanna help them so much. So in my own life, ended up in 2005, at a mediation, okay? So my aunt was there and she said to him, let her go." And he said, "I won't until I destroy her."
Hey, he was honest. I'll give him that.
Shut
He
up,
he
yeah.
said he said the truth.
And so, here's the thing, I must have looked kinda bad, Todd, because all of a sudden, whatever they were like, "Hey, whatever," and he was like, "Yeah, I did it." At some point, somehow he was like, "Yeah, I destroyed her. Like, it's good." So he signed me off, and I sat with him and mediator, and we worked out the deal, and I was free. Free, free, free. Oh my gosh, that was 2005. Head to Texas, right? Got to Texas, whatever. God did a great work in me. And I ended up in 2016 or in 2006, September 2006, I heard God say, stronger than espresso. And he said 5 things. And that became the healing process that survivors use now. And we're in our 4th edition, and we use that process to heal from domestic violence, right? I didn't know how to heal myself, but God told me, and I made a thing, and it's like
Yeah.
help people,
Yeah, and
right?
this is your
That's
your
all it
your
is.
your mission, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
You hear these stories, and sometimes yeah, the phrase I learned, I think I told you this last time you and I talked. I learned a phrase, "People can't talk themselves out of something they didn't talk themselves into." And I love that idea, and so when people are in these situations, it's sort of like a heroin addict. It's easy for us to say, "Well, don't do heroin, look what it's doing to you." Well, they're not doing it from logic, and so they're not gonna undo it from logic. And people
Exactly.
in domestic abuse, like, I had a friend, and this is when it clicked for me. I had a friend abused, and I was like, I made her call the police, and then but she ended up walking away and not pressing charges. I go, "Why aren't you press charges?" She goes, "Well, he'll lose his job." I'm like, "The guy who almost killed you, you give a crud about them losing their are
Of
you
course.
crazy?" And it's like, "Well,
No,
yeah,
of course.
of course."
Okay, Todd, do you understand love?
Well, I'm learning love.
Do you understand? I know, but she loves him.
Yeah, well,
That's what doesn't make sense.
it
Okay,
doesn't.
domestic violence doesn't make sense because it's based on love.
Well,
She loves him.
broke a distorted view of love. That's my
Exactly.
point, right?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
you're
Yes.
right. It's the thought of this is what love looks like, or I love them, therefore I'm gonna get
Yes.
through it, and it's like, no, 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 you have a distorted view of what love is, which is why I say we go to the Bible and God tells you what love is. And if that
Mhm.
definition of what your boyfriend, spouse, family member is doing doesn't fit that definition, it's not love. It's not
Exactly.
love.
Right. Exactly. And that's the challenge with people when you're like saying, no, that's not exactly what it's about. Right. Yeah.
Wow, 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 well, God, I mean, God makes silver linings, he uses all things for good, and I know we flippantly say that, but it is true, which is once again this divorce podcast. My divorce is horrible, and it has tsunami and ripple effects through your life and other people's lives or whatever, but God uses, I think yours is horrible, way worse than mine, but God uses that, and you definitely are taking your knowledge and experience to know how to talk to somebody that I wouldn't know how to. I would have no clue. And so, I'm so happy you're pouring into
Yeah,
this.
and I would say to you, Todd, any of your listeners that are going through a situation, they might have thought about divorce care or done divorce care, but they may don't have quite what the healing they need. They're looking for something a little bit more. They think abuse is present. They should reach out to us
Yeah, yeah,
because there's
agreed.
an opportunity for them to take a few steps. It's not going to hurt them. It's only going to help them and it doesn't cost anyone
Yeah, and
anything,
it's the
and we
aha
would
moment,
love to bring
is
them.
take the step with your
Yes,
aha moment, and even if you're listening to this, you're like,
yes.
"You know what? I have some of these tendencies, or I've seen this in my life." Like, I that's the thing I say all the time with this
Yeah,
divorce care
yeah,
is I think too many people say to themselves, "I was in
mhm.
a bad relationship, that one's over. I mourned the loss, and now I'm on with my life. And I'm over here like,
Yes. They gotta get help in
yes, you
between.
need to
They need help.
reset and figure out why
Yeah.
you were in that relationship, what happened when that what part do you
Mhm.
own, and you need to heal before you go latch on to another broken one because
Yeah.
you're you're the common denominator. And with me, the longer I dated, the more failed relationships, I was like, "Wait a minute, I'm the common denominator in every one of these. What lenses do I have on that are unhealthy?" And I've had to
Yes,
do a
right.
lot of I've false started so many times dating, it's a world I guarantee I own the world record on that, of just getting in a relationship to find out, that doesn't work. Well, wait a minute, what is that?" And I think this with people who are in our case of this title of this episode, if you're using sex as currency, if you find a pattern or you think you're even in a abusive, that doesn't have to be physical. Abusive is a big word. There is financial abuse, there is emotional abuse, like you said, spiritual abuse. There's a lot of ways people abuse you. And if you're in an abusive relationship, you don't have to sit in that. You don't.
Exactly, and Todd, I'm gonna go back to what you said, sex is a currency. So, sex is a currency in so many ways in a relationship, whether it was an abusive relationship in the past. But that brings me to my current relationship. Sex as a currency doesn't change, right? When you learn survival techniques, you learn ways to navigate whatever, you're learning things that you need. And that can bring you into your next relationship. Doesn't always mean that it's all that you need. Like sometimes you have to let your defenses down. Does that make sense? And sometimes I feel like with what we do and abuse, survival, we're always got our defenses up. And sometimes, if you ever going to be in a real relationship and really trust someone, you're going to have to let your guard down. And that is so hard for all of my people, right? Vulnerability is the key. And they can't because they're so afraid. And I think that's important for them moving to a new relationship because they need to know they can trust a new person who they're trusting their life to,
That's right.
right?
Well, amen, amen, amen. And I'm gonna say something you said a minute ago, which is
Hmm.
why it takes time because you're a fool
Yeah.
to trust early, and it takes
Yes.
time to build that trust. And by the time you find that person who's proved they're trustworthy, then you can let the walls down correctly, and you have to trust.
Yeah.
Because if you go in early and it's this false trust and false love, you'll get burned, and they'll get burned, and y'all
Yeah.
will get burned. It burns to the ground. You're 100% right. Oh, wow, that's really, really good.
Yeah.
I we could go off and talk about that, but I think this is a great stopping point, and next time, I'd
Yes.
probably like to go into some of the nuances
Mhm.
of if somebody heard this and it really spurred their like, what is a healthy relationship look like? Am I in an unhealthy relationship? How do I find these patterns? Like, we can talk a little bit more about that. The sex
Love to.
is a subtopic. We'll avoid sex altogether next time and talk literally just about being in unhealthy relationships. How do you spot it? How do you spot the patterns of what you can do? Real quick before we hang up, if somebody heard this and they're like, "I'm ready to take a next step," what do you want them to do on your website? What website do they go to? What's their next step? How can you help them?
Thank you so much, Todd. Yes. If you want to know more, check us out at strongerwomen.com. www.strongerwomen.com. You can also call me on my cell phone, 214-708-7085. We are here to help navigate women who are dealing with domestic violence and finding the next step. So we're here to help.
I love it.
Yep.
Absolutely love it. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes.
Uh, Part 2, it just won't be sex related, it'll be relationship related, and we'll probably
Exactly.
get to that next week. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Todd.
much. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Hey, it's Todd Turner. If you're a woman trying to rebuild after a divorce, I've got a workbook just for you. Faith based, practical, and real. Check it out at toddturner.com. There's more where this came from. Stick around. You got this.